But my father came from a Kenyan family that includes generations of Muslims. As a boy, I spent several years in Indonesia and heard the call of the azan at the break of dawn. I have known Islam on 3 continents before coming to the region where it was first revealed. That experience guides my conviction.
You are absolutely right that John McCain has not talked about my Muslim faith.
I would like to speak directly to the people and leaders of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Their great and celebrated culture. Over many centuries, your art, your music, literature, and innovation have made the world a better and more beautiful place. We know that you are a great civilization, and your accomplishments have earned the respect of the United States and the world.
Islamic culture has given us majestic arches and soaring spires, timeless poetry and cherished music, elegant calligraphy, and places of peaceful contemplation. They have fought in our wars, they have served in our government, they have stood for civil rights, they have started businesses, they have taught at our universities, they have excelled in our sports arenas, they've won Nobel Prizes, built our tallest building, and lit the Olympic torch. And when the first Muslim American was recently elected to Congress, he took the oath to defend our Constitution using the same Holy Quran. Islam is not part of the problem in combating violent extremism. It is an important part of promoting peace.
And if you put these and many, many other comments together with his actions, I get the sense that we're entering a period where the leadership of this country may have switched sides in the war on terror. Welcome to The Resistance. I'm your host, Forrest Wilson. More on this later when former CIA officer Clare Lopez joins us. And this is breaking news by the Jerusalem Post. They claim Obama has agreed to 80% of Iran's demands in nuclear talks. Israeli officials tell Channel 10 on Friday that they are convinced that the Obama administration has already agreed to most of Iran's demands in the negotiations over the Islamic Republic's nuclear program. According to unnamed officials, Washington has given the Iranians 80% of what they want out of the negotiations, Channel 10 is reporting. Jerusalem officials appear alarmed at the prospect that the United States will soon strike a deal with the Iranian regime that will leave it with a breakout point of months before it can gallop towards the bomb. An Obama administration official dismissed the claims in the Channel 10 report as complete nonsense, just like they dismissed the existence of radical Islamic terrorists in favor of a more deceptive narrative of extremists committing violent acts with no relationship to Islam or any of the countries supporting radical Islamic terrorists and jihad, including the state sponsor of terror, Iran. And this from CBN. U.S. taxpayers funding anti-Netanyahu campaign. This is by John Wage, CBN News senior editor. 2 U.S. lawmakers have sent a letter to the State Department asking whether President Barack Obama has launched a political campaign against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He's the one that they called Chicken S. He's also a former Israeli commando. This guy is a heavyweight, to say the least, when it comes to fighting Islamic terror and Islamic terror groups. The piece goes on, Prime Minister, this campaign against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and whether American taxpayers are helping to fund the campaign. Senator Ted Cruz and Representative Lee Zeldin of New York sent a letter this week asking the State Department to explain whether or not a not-for-profit group called One Voice, supported by U.S. tax dollars, is working with a campaign called Operation Victory 2015 to influence Israel's elections to be held March 17th. The lawmakers called taxpayer funding for such a purpose completely unacceptable. Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu are really one of our strongest allies in the region against the rise of radical Islam and keeping Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. And we know Iran's stated mission stated mission is to wipe Israel from the face of the earth. We also know that they formally declared war against the United States in 1979. I'm not sure they've ever rescinded that formal declaration. And you can believe their aspirations will result in a conflict with the West. So what do you believe? I mean, a lot of people seem to have their head in the sand over this, or worse, someplace near their waistband. But do you know this name, Edmund Burke? Do you know this quote that was attributed to him? The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. I mean, how much do we see of this? I often challenge my friends and acquaintances after a discussion of, something to do with the growth of government or the rise of radical Islam, government surveillance, some other topic of horror in the news. And I ask them, what are you doing about it? And almost without exception, I get a blank stare. And then I go to work. I go to work on their psyche. Look, I know there's not much that you can really do or feel like you can do, but we do acknowledge that we've got to do something. And that's why I said last week on this program, it's time for revolution. And I really think it's going to happen whether we do something or not. But look, I want you to understand something. We don't need a new form of government. We don't need a violent uprising. We've got the basics with the Republic and the Constitution. But we do need a revolution, and we need to bring our political class back to the foundation of this republic. And this revolution that I'm talking about really begins with you, and resistance is not futile. My goal with this radio broadcast is to really bring you some tools so you can mount your own personal revolution and resist this overthrow of our republic. The Constitution is still the law of the land. By the way, if you'd like a copy of the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, and you call the station and leave your address with Jack, I'll send you one today. And I encourage you to read it. God knows we need it. Fully 2/3 of our fellow Americans can't identify the three branches of government. I encourage you to share this document with them. And the Constitution lays out the three branches, and it just makes it crystal clear why America is the envy of freedom-loving people all over the world. Our number is 904-222-TALK at 904-222-8255. And, if this number is not offensive enough to you, 800-318-2596, that's a number for healthcare.gov, then it's alphabetization, which you pay for, should be 800-F1, the number 1, UCKYO. You spell it out. You look at it. And maybe it's the fact this hideous bill was passed completely on a partisan vote. I'm talking about the Affordable Health Care Act in the House and Senate. It's passed completely by Democrats. Maybe it's the fact that few, if any, of our elected our employees read the damn thing before voting on it. Or maybe it's this. Obamacare program costs $50,000 in taxpayer money for every American who gets health insurance. Says this bombshell budget report. Stunning figure comes from the Congressional Budget Office report that revised cost estimates for the next 10 years. Government will spend close to $2 trillion over a decade and take in $643 billion in new taxes, penalties, and fees related to Obamacare. The $1.35 trillion net cost will result in between 24 million and 27 million fewer Americans being uninsured. A $50,000 price tag per person at best. The law will still leave between 29 million and 31 million non-elderly Americans without medical insurance. Numbers assume Obamacare insurance exchange enrollment will double between now and 2025. In other words, they're counting on these enrollment numbers doubling here between now and 2025. And look, this is not according to some right-wing media outlet. This is being reported by David Martosco, U.S. political editor for the dailymail.com, a UK news outlet. Our revolting number is 904-222-TALK, 904-222-8255. By the way, our website is wethepeople1787.org, wethepeople1787.org. I mean, are you ready to revolt yet? I want you to stay tuned because I'm going to bring you a tool. I mentioned it last week, but I'm going to bring you the president of the company that offers a tool that you can use. Stay tuned. You're listening to The Resistance, Forrest Wilson, and we will be right back after this message.
Let's return to We the People with Forrest Wilson. Once again, here's Forrest.
Last week on the program, I introduced you to MediShare. It's a program of Christian Care Ministry, and it's a healthcare sharing program whose members share financial resources to pay each other's medical expenses. And I wanted to bring in Tony Meggs. He's the president of Christian Care Ministry since April of 2011. He's got 25 years in experience in strategic planning, business development, and management of for-profit and not-for-profit organizations. Tony, welcome to The Resistance.
It's good to be with you today.
I'm really impressed with your program, and I found out about it on this radio broadcast through a commercial. But what's the just give me the high-level view of MediShare and what it can do.
Sure. As you were mentioning, Christian Care Ministry facilitates a program called MediShare, and in short, MediShare is a group of people who share faith and a belief across the country that share their resources, that share their money with each other on a monthly basis to pay each other's medical bills. We've been doing this since 1993, and we've created a very convenient process, scalable process to make tens of thousands of Christians across the country, equip them with the ability to share each other's medical bills every month.
Now, if I understand it correctly, I had gotten a quote from your organization to participate in the program, and for a family of 6 with a $10,000 annual responsibility, which would be akin to a $10,000 deductible, it was less than $300 a month for a family of 6.
Yeah, it's really the experience of most families, most couples and singles. Because there's no profit motive really built in to what we do, because of I think some of the lifestyles that our community is committed to, our costs and our expenses are less than perhaps what you would experience in an insurance product in the market, and so it's an affordable way to make certain that your family doesn't get caught in a catastrophic medical event and not be able to pay their medical bills. You've got over 120,000 Christians across the country that come together with you to pay those medical bills. And as I was sharing, we just have made that just a very convenient process to do every month.
Now, the other end of the spectrum is there's another quote in my package, and it's for a little bit more money, less than $700 a month, then my obligation would be about $1,500 per calendar year. But I'm thinking, either one of those programs or somewhere in between, if I combine it with a health savings account, man, I've just solved my insurance problem for a fraction of the cost of what I'd pay for the Affordable Care Act.
Yeah, we've given the way we kind of constructed our program, our ministry. We wanted to give different options. There's different budgets out there. Cash flows are different from family to family, and we've created a process of where you can kind of build a program that's a good fit for your household budget. And again, as compared to, what, an insurance product out there in which we're not insurance, that's certainly one of the critical, points that needs to be made. This isn't insurance. This is a reliance on Christians across the country to sharing your medical bills each month. We've been doing it since 1993, and 100% of the medical bills that we've ever published for sharing have been shared. But it's not insurance. It's a concept that's built on a biblical principle found in Acts of simply how we're to take care of one another.
Well, listen, I'd much rather rely on a Christian than a bureaucrat any day of the week. And if you become involved in this program, you're exempt from the Affordable Care Act. Is that true as well?
It is, and I think this is one of the positive things that we can certainly say about the Affordable Care Act. There's no doubt, you get a law that's 2,600 pages and that most people didn't even read, and we can all find something in that we're not going to like. But the one thing I think both the left side and the right side of the aisle did get right is that they looked at healthcare sharing ministries, they looked at their history, they looked at the stability of healthcare sharing in the context of how they take care of their members, and they wanted to make sure that members of healthcare sharing ministries were part of the healthcare solution moving forward. So what they did, they gave members of programs like Medishare, they gave those members a special exemption from the taxes and the penalties that are associated with the individual mandate. So what it does for a portion of the population, those who would agree with our statement of faith, who would abide by our code of conduct, it gives them a way to comply with the nation's law, the nation's laws in a legal way, but also comply in a way that doesn't violate their conscience and is an affordable alternative.
Well, Tony, you mentioned that there's approximately 120,000 members in your ministry. What are the requirements for membership? Now, I'm a Christian. I'm a member of a church, and but how would I qualify, or how would someone qualify for this program?
Yeah, it's a very simple process. We simply require that you agree to our statement of faith. It's your straight line Protestant statement of faith focused on the deity of Jesus Christ and His death and resurrection. So it requires an acceptance of that statement of faith. It requires acceptance of living by our code of conduct, not abusing alcohol, not abusing drugs, no sex outside the traditional marriage, the traditional Christian marriage, and then just to share with us what your testimony is in terms of your faith in Christ. Those are the requirements for membership. We don't decline anyone. Anyone's welcome to be a part of our membership as long as they can attest to those three things. And then the way to do it is just they can go to our website, mychristiancare.org or mychristiancare.com. But we right there at the website, it explains the program, explains how it works. Your listeners can. There's a number of different testimonials of families across the country and how this program works and how it's worked for them and how it's benefited them. So that's the easy way to get involved and to find out about it and actually apply the program. Just go to the website.
Well, I want to give out your 800 number, 800-772-5623, 800-772-5623. I'll give it a couple of more times in the broadcast because I really am impressed with what you're doing. You can actually do this across state lines as well, can you not?
That's right. That's right.
Everywhere except Montana, is that correct?
That's right. Right. We're not in the state of Montana, and they would have certain requirements for us to participate there. And because we're a nonprofit, it's just not a good use of our not a good stewardship of our resources. So we don't operate today in Montana.
Has Hobby Lobby reached out to you?
We've had a number, just in recent months, we've had a number of organizations reach out to us that are looking for ways to comply with the law, but ways that kind of align with perhaps their faith and their belief and, the principles that the organizations were built upon. And so, in some cases we're a good alternative for those small businesses. Hobby Lobby specifically, I don't think that they've reached out. They're a very large organization, and they have different responsibilities and requirements in relationship to the ACA. But for small businesses, small organizations, churches, and ministries, we often end up being a good solution.
80% of the country identifies as Christian. You've got a huge market out there. It sounds like this is potentially a solution to the healthcare crisis in this country, and I'm just really impressed with what you're doing. I'm really impressed with your organization. So if I've got if a company comes to you, can they get like a policy that would cover their employees? Is that something they have to do on an individual basis?
Companies can participate. The individual employees would have to attest to those three elements to membership. But we have just scores of companies and churches and small businesses that are interested and do participate in our program.
Tony Meggs, president of Christian Care Ministry, I sure do appreciate your time today, and God bless you and your ministry.
Hey, same to you. Thank you.
That is an amazing organization. I hope you'll contact them. I'll be right back.
Let's return to We the People with Forrest Wilson. Once again, here's Forrest.
And I want to give you that website again. Last week I gave you medishare.org. You have to put a dash in the middle of that. That's MEDI-SHARE.org. If you don't put a dash in there, you get to a different website. But if you do put a dash in there, you get to mychristiancare.org. mychristiancare.org. And it looks like these guys have really solved the issue of, for lack of a better term, I don't even know if you can call it health insurance anymore now that the government has nationalized it, but they have a program for Christians. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to, confirm your Christian faith, which 80% of you apparently are Christians. If you want to call them, it's 800-772-5623, 800-772-5623, and combine this program with a health savings account, and you have revolted against the nationalization of health insurance by the Democrats. I hope you'll reach out to these folks. It is really fascinating what they do. They do it across state lines. There's no issue with you calling from Georgia if you're listening from Georgia, or really anywhere in the country with the exception of Montana. I don't exactly understand what it is about Montana, but apparently Montana is excluded. But what a great organization. I mean, and look, I'd much rather deal with a Christian than a bureaucrat. Just tremendous. I hope you'll give them a call. It's 800-772-5623. Again, there's no affiliation between this program and ChristianCare.org. I'm just very concerned about the direction of this country and the nationalization of industries, which, look, the government didn't invent health insurance. All they did was take it over. I mean, how? Anyways, I hope you'll get in touch with these folks. So earlier I was saying that it appears the White House has switched sides in the war on terror. I mean, you heard some of the comments of the president, and you heard the breaking news from the Jerusalem Post regarding apparently the administration's agreeance to approximately 80% of Iran's demands. And you've got to ask yourself, were they ever on the side of the American people? You've got Valerie Jarrett, the senior White House advisor to the president, born in Iran. I don't know if she's a Muslim or not, but what difference does it make? But someone who can really shed some light on this is Clare Lopez. She's a strategic policy and intelligence expert with a focus on the Middle East, national defense, WMD, and counterterrorism issues. She began her career as an operations officer with Central Intelligence Agency and served 20 years. Now she's a vice president of research and analysis at the Center for Security Policy in Washington, D.C. I want to bring her in now. Jack, is she on She's on line 6? Okay, great. Claire, welcome to the Resistance. How are you?
Thank you. Very glad to be with you.
You know, I really wanted to talk to you today about Islamic no-go zones, but I'm just astounded at some of the breaking news regarding Iran and some of the other things going on with the administration. Now, you have been quoted about this switch, this allegiance with the Muslim Brotherhood. I've had other guests on this show that have stated that the Muslim Brotherhood has infiltrated our government. Tell me why you believe that, and what does it mean?
Well, sure. As we look at the history of the Muslim Brotherhood, which of course began in 1928 in Egypt, it spread outwards from there, especially as various governments in Egypt, like Nasser's and Mubarak's, eventually cracked down on them. And they spread first to Europe, and this is during and after World War II, when, of course, Arabs and Palestinians were so closely allied with the Nazis and with Hitler during World War II. And afterwards, they eventually spread to the United States. And if we look at some of their foundational documents, one of the key tenets of the Muslim Brotherhood is something they call a civilizational process. In other words, a settlement process, a civilizational jihad. And the intent of the Brotherhood and the strategy of the Brotherhood is to spread outwards. And they arrived in the United States, in the 1950s and 60s. They began setting up organizations, front groups. This really took off in the 1990s, though. And unfortunately, our own leadership, the Clinton administrations, and then later the G.W. Bush administrations, really didn't understand what they were dealing with, even as the Muslim Brotherhood proliferated across the United States, infiltrating every area, academia, government, our intelligence community, certainly the media, and the social workplace writ large, if you will. I think, though, that when the Obama administration came to office in early 2009, that process of empowering and enabling the Muslim Brotherhood in America really accelerated, only this time it was witting. It was deliberate. This administration knows what it's doing and does it deliberately. And so we do have many, many thousands now of front groups belonging to the Muslim Brotherhood, affiliated with it in some way in the United States. But yes, their top operatives have infiltrated our government and act as advisors and also appointees at senior positions within the national security leadership, Department of State, Department of Homeland Security, and the White House itself at the National Security Council.
Well, you know, listen, I'm reluctant to call this president a Muslim, but I've had others do it on this program. I mean, is it possible? I guess he's a Muslim sympathizer.
I mean, what we can say with certainty is that under Islamic law, Sharia, any child born to a Muslim father is a Muslim for life, and you can't get out of it unless you apostatize. Now, the president says that he is a Christian, which would suggest apostasy. Of course, that carries the death penalty under Islamic law. But there's this other aspect, and that is that the scholars of Islam kind of disagree on whether if a young person below the age of puberty, before they reach their teens, leaves the active practice of Islam, are they an apostate? These are all academic questions. As you just pointed out, you know, it hardly matters when you look at the actual policies of this administration, which are, you know, inarguably pro-Islam, pro-Muslim Brotherhood, and yes, even in Libya, pro-Al-Qaeda, where our government chose to arm and back and fund and support Al-Qaeda militias to overthrow the anti-Al-Qaeda regime of Muammar Gaddafi.
You know, I've been out of Washington for 20 years, so it's hard for people outside the Beltway really to grasp and understand and appreciate all of the information that you've got to pass along and all of the research and work that you do and that others do. But here's something that really was astounding to me. The constitutions that were written for Afghanistan and Iraq, these were Sharia compliant. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And if you look at the number 1 or number 2 articles in each of those constitutions, which, yes, were written with the advice and the assistance of Department of State officials, those articles say Islamic law is supreme, or something to that effect, that no other laws shall contradict Sharia. And the United States government presided over the writing of those constitutions. I sort of doubt that our State Department people really understood what they were doing. They don't really have a lot of knowledge about these things. And, of course, any Muslim country, and especially, the 57 members of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation are obliged. They're obligated to operate under Sharia, Islamic law. But that we should have helped them do this and then pretend, that we are helping them to move towards, liberal representative-style democracy is just an insult and an insult to all, the brave troops who fought and died in these places, thinking, that they were trying to help these people, come to a more democratic representative form of government. And in fact, what they were fighting and dying for were Sharia regimes.
Well, I will say this. I agree with you. There seems to be just a naivete about Islam and what it is and what it represents. But there's certainly plenty of people like yourself in Washington. There's plenty of subject matter experts who can attest to the danger of radical Islam and the radicalization of Islam and the spread of Islam. I just don't understand why they don't utilize those resources to better understand and better shape our foreign policy.
Well, let's come back to the Muslim Brotherhood for a moment then. Some of your listeners may know that during 2011 till 2012, the U.S. government, at the urging and under the pressure of these Muslim Brotherhood advisors and appointees and so forth, infiltrators, information operators within the U.S. government, literally purged the entire training curriculum of the U.S. government for Department of Homeland Security, Department of Justice, Department of State, Department of Defense, meaning the Pentagon, our entire military, our intelligence community, FBI, CIA, completely purged of any training curriculum that would correctly teach what Islam is, what its ideology is, and how that ideology, the doctrine, the law, the scriptures of Islam inspire Muslims who follow the path of jihad to do just that, to follow in fi sabilillah, the pathway of Allah, meaning jihad. So this kind of teaching and training is forbidden within the U.S. government since that time. And people who understand these things, the subject matter experts, we who try to get this information to people, are not allowed to teach anyone in the U.S. government, and the U.S. government and its officials and employees are forbidden to discuss these things.
What time frame are we talking about? When did all this take place, this purging?
Between 2011 and 2012 is when it really began in earnest, although I have to say that the language within the U.S. government, the use of certain vocabulary like Islam and jihad, caliphate, such words, really that purge began under George W. Bush as far back as 2007. But all of this at the urging of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Claire, can you stay through the break? I want to continue our conversation. This is fascinating. I had no idea, and I sure do appreciate you coming on today.
Okay, sure, I'll wait. Mm-hmm.
We're talking with Clare Lopez, former CIA. Claire, were you a case officer? I've got operations.
I was an operations officer.
former operations officer. She's now the Vice President for Research and Analysis at the Center for Security Policy in Washington, D.C. We'll be right back with Clare Lopez. You're listening to The Resistance. Forrest Wilson, AM 600, FM 100.3. Stay tuned.
Let's return to We the People with Forrest Wilson. Once again, here's Forrest.
And we're back. We're talking with Clare Lopez, Vice President for Research and Analysis at the Center for Security Policy in Washington, D.C. Clare, I want to play a clip, and I want to get your reaction to it.
Okay.
Well, I think, John, the
Taliban is still conducting terrorist attacks, so you can't really say that the war has ended as far as they're concerned.
Well, I'd also point out that the Taliban is an armed insurgency. ISIL is a terrorist group, so we don't make concessions to terrorist groups.
That was Eric Schultz, a deputy White House press secretary, and it's just astounding to me that he says that the Taliban is not a terrorist group.
Yeah, you just sometimes got to feel sorry for these poor spokesmen out there. They have to stick to their script, and they're not allowed to go off of it, no matter how ridiculous it sounds. Of course, this was an absurd statement. It was repeated and doubled down on by him and by others over the course of the last, day or two, I guess. You see, the U.S. cannot acknowledge officially that the Taliban is a terrorist organization, for one thing, because we are now leaving Afghanistan, pulling our troops out, essentially under fire. 3 more Americans were just killed by insider attack within the last few days in Afghanistan. So we're fleeing the battlefield under fire. We know for a fact that Afghanistan will revert to Taliban control within the near future after we're gone. And so, they simply cannot be honest, or their entire foreign policy regarding Afghanistan would fall to pieces.
This is almost a reset to pre-9/11 days for Afghanistan.
That's a very valid concern, I think. The last time the Taliban came to power in Afghanistan, of course, in the 1990s, before 9/11, it offered safe haven, refuge, and protection to Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. And there is no reason to think that they would not do so once again after we're gone. Never mind that we're hearing also reports recently that the Islamic State is moving into Afghan territory and apparently contesting against the Taliban for fighters and territory and allegiance there. The other thing to remember is that Iran was deeply involved together with Al-Qaeda and, of course, Hezbollah in the direction of the 9/11 attacks, the planning, the operation itself. Iran and Hezbollah also have long had training, backing, funding, arming relationships with the Taliban. That will continue, if not increase and intensify. So leaving Afghanistan now in the state that we're leaving it is just an invitation to chaos and, as you say, we hope not, but possibly, another run-up to another horrific terrorist operation launched against our homeland, perhaps out of Afghan territory.
Well, you made a really astounding statement. You believe our president has essentially the same goals in the Middle East as Osama bin Laden. What did you mean by that?
Well, I never actually said that. I know that I was quoted that way. What I said is that our president, President Obama, has made it a policy decision since the beginning of his presidency to withdraw American forces and also our power and our influence and our backing for former allies from Islamic lands. Now, this so happens to coincide with Islamic doctrine, which says that any time the infidel, the kuffar, the non-Muslim, invades or sets one foot on Islamic lands, that the entire ummah, the entire global community of Muslims, on an individual basis without the necessity of an order from a caliph is empowered, is obligated to conduct jihad against that invader, as they would see it, until the invader is expelled from Muslim lands. So the U.S. policy coincides precisely with compliance with that Islamic doctrine.
You know, all of this, I guess you guys that do this type of work, that study Islam and the rise of Islamic fundamentalism, you have to talk about some of the solutions for policymakers and just sketch out what a possible solution for the United States to thwart the advance of radical Islam and prevent future terrorist attacks.
Well, I would refer your listeners to the Center for Security Policy's recent strategy paper that was presented at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. just about a week and a bit ago. We call it the Secure Freedom Strategy. You can find it at our website, centerforsecuritypolicy.org. And that security strategy lays out a whole-of-government approach to defeat the global jihad movement. We don't call it radical. Anything that is a deviation from the norm would be called radical or extreme. But when it is the norm, as jihad is in Islamic doctrine, you can't call that radical. That's normative. So we call it global jihad. And our strategy outlines a multi-phase, multi-pronged effort to defeat the global jihad. Number one, we have to name the enemy. We have to identify the enemy doctrine. The enemy is all forces of Islamic jihad fighting in any way, violent, pre-violent, or dawah, non-violent, subversion, to impose Sharia. That's what we are fighting. We are fighting to live free of Sharia. Once we get that down, then we apply all the efforts of the government, intelligence, ideology. We have to contest in the cyber world. We have to work against financial warfare. All of these things are elements of the strategy, and of course military too.
Well, Claire, this is, I hope we can have some time in the future. The website is the centerforsecuritypolicy.org. We've been talking with Clare Lopez, who's an expert in Middle Eastern affairs. Claire, I want to thank you again for your time today. Really amazing and enlightening.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You're listening to The Resistance, AM 600, FM 100.3. I hope you'll check out the website, centerforsecuritypolicy.org. And we'll be back same time next week. Thank you for listening.